Okay, now that the staves have been cut on the table saw at 9 degrees to rough dimension and width, here I'm setting up the joiner also at 9 degrees to do the fine tuning of each stave to make them exactly the width that they need to be, which is basically 2¼ inches wide. So I'm loosening the fence of the joiner up right now. I'm going to tilt it, as you see here, to match 9-degree block. And then just like the table saw, I'm going to double check with the Wixie digital angle gauge. But first I got to set it on the joiner, and that is my reference source, the bed of the joiner. Once I'm zeroed, then I'm going to stick it on the side of the fence and verify that it is in fact 9 degrees. It's really critical that it be 9 degrees, because if it's not, then when I glue up the shell, there will be gaps in the staves and it won't glue up right, which obviously will pose problems when I'm turning and afterward. Okay, here I'm refining the angle of each stave, running it on the joiner twice over those blades that are set to take about a 32nd of an inch off each pass. And then I'm going to check it with my dial caliper for accuracy concerning the width dimension until I get it to that 2¼ inches wide. And I'll go through these on each one of the staves and get them to the same width before I do the glue up. Okay, I've got my dust collection hooked up to this joiner, but for some reason it's not pulling those chips down like it's supposed to. I've checked to see if there's a clog somewhere. I can't really see one. So I'm having to use my shop vac here to vacuum between staves so that I don't ride on top of a chip and affect the angle. Okay, here I've laid all the staves out and I've got them in the orientation that I want for aesthetics, and I'm taking a measurement from end to end to make sure that it's going to be the proper length to produce the diameter of the rough shell that I want. And now that I know the length is what it needs to be, I'm getting ready to flip them over. And now I'll begin to apply the glue between each stave. And now I'm going to roll it up into a circle. Hopefully all those angles are precise so I get a good squeeze out at each seam. And I'm going to put a a belt type clamp all the way around on the bottom and then the top, and then I'll put one right in the middle as well. And here I'm rubbing my finger along each seam, make sure that that good squeeze out of glue is there, as well as taking the excess off. When I go to turn it on the lathe, if I left all that there, it becomes flying shrapnel. So I learned that from experience. And now I'm getting ready to take measurements at 12 and 6, 3 and 9, to make sure that the rough dimension of the drum is round. I'm looking for 14 1/4 inches at 12 and 6, 9 and 3. And if it's not the same, then I can tweak the shell a little bit to try to achieve that. Okay, and here what I'm doing is drawing lines from corner to corner to find the exact center of this plywood, because this is going to become my faceplate once I drill a hole in the center, and then I'll be placing it on my bandsaw on a circle cutting jig that I made years ago so that I can cut the faceplate out. Yeah, after drawing those lines, I drilled a hole through the center where the X was, and now I'm cutting the circle out here on the bandsaw on my circle cutting jig. A little peg on there that holds it in place, and the piece that's hanging out to the right is my adjustment sliding mechanism. So this one's adjusted to cut out about a 14.5 diameter, 14.5 inch diameter disc. Okay, and here I'm going to attach the faceplate to the plywood faceplate, and all of that's going to go onto the lathe once the shell is glued to it. So I'm centering it on that hole that I drilled, and then I'm going to put screws in it to fix the lathe faceplate to the plywood. Okay, I'm going to use this gouge to true up that faceplate, but first I need to sharpen it so it makes a good cut. Okay, here I'm at the lathe with the faceplate and attaching it to the spindle of the lathe, and then I'll set up my tool rest, which is to my right there, and using my gouge and the spindle turning, I'll true up this faceplate to about 14.25 inches in diameter, and that'll allow me to center that faceplate on the shell when I go to glue up, and hopefully preclude any excessive wobble. Okay, and here I'm trimming up the edge that's going to be glued to the faceplate, and I'm using this large disc with sandpaper I put on it. I've had this for years. Didn't notice it at first, but it really looks like it's not quite as flat as it used to be. It's been sitting around for a while, but in any case, I'll get these, all these edges of the staves worked down until they're flat. You know, when you glue them up, they don't always sit flat on the table perfectly, so this is always kind of required. Plus glue squeeze out, you got to get all that out of the way so everything's nice and clean to put that faceplate on. And here I'm just going to test fit the faceplate to the shell before I actually commit to gluing it up, make sure everything's looking good. Okay, and now that I've got glue applied liberally to the edge grain of all those staves all the way around, I'm putting the faceplate on here, and I'm going to triple check and make sure that it's evenly spaced all the way around, which really there's not any space because it's the same diameter as the rough shell is itself. But I'm checking it 12, 6, 3, and 9 to make sure it feels the same all the way around there. And that way I know the shell is going to be centered on the faceplate. And again, to try to preclude any kind of excessive wobbling that might be present when I first start milling the shell down to size. And then even when I put the clamps on, I'm going very slowly here and just double checking as I go around to make sure things haven't slid. Alright, well, got the faceplate glued to the drum shell here, and I'm just going to let it sit up overnight, and then tomorrow I'll be ready to mount this thing on the lathe and get everything squared up and begin by cutting the OD on the shell to get it to the right dimension, which is going to be about 13 and 15 sixteenths, leaving me a little bit of room to sand as well. Finished diameter being about 13 and 7/8 or a little better than that. And then of course the ID, I'm probably going to turn this down to about a 1/2 inch thick, which is a little thicker than normal, but I've got the beef there, so I'm going to go ahead and give it a little bit more thickness than normally I would do, like 3/8 of an inch, but I'm going to do 1/2 inch on this since I've got the material. And it won't be long now and this thing will be a drum shell, barring any kind of catastrophes. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.